Hello, YouTube family. Welcome to the channel and thank you so much for clicking this video. My name is Kwa. I am currently a critical care nurse working here in Houston. I specialize in the medical ICU and surgical ICU. So shout out to all our MICU and CQ nurses out there. So today I plan to make this video sharing my experience of taking the CCRN exam. I recently took the exam less than a month ago, so I have a pretty fresh memory about what the exam entails. I want to share my experience taking the exam with you all and motivate you to get certified. There's a lot of benefits come with being certified as an ICU nurse. We always know that. And obviously, you guys clicking into this video, that means that you are planning to take the CCRN exam. So I want to share with you my resources, the resources that I found very useful in passing the exam, and also some practice question I found very relevant to know and to motivate you to start learning as well. And then I'll share with you some free resources as well. With that all being said, let's just go ahead and get started, make it very quick and easy. So here I'm sharing my screen right now. We all know CCRN is Critical Care Registered Nurse certifications. This is certified from this is the certification provided by the AACN, American Association of Critical Care Nurses. I encourage all of our ICU nurses out there to join and involve with the professional organization. They have so many benefits for ICU nurses. And it's so easy to keep up with all of your CEs and everything like that when you are a member of AACN. They're not sponsoring me, but by the way. Anyway, so CCRN, why does it matter? CCRN, obviously, it helps benefiting you. When we pass the CCRN, we are certified ICU nurses. We get higher pay. There's a small increase in pay for us. It signifies and maintain up-to-date critical care knowledge. It have up-to-date information, and also it signify that you know your stuff, that you are resources for your unit and your hospital and obviously your patients. Easier to get a high paid traveling contract. Most traveling contract with higher pay, especially ICU nowadays, they always say that prefer certifications. So if you are CCRN certified, it shows that you know your stuff and you know your meds, you know your critical care. So easier to get a high paying contract. And obviously grad school application out there if you guys trying to apply for CRNA school or nurse practitioner school or anything. It shows your commitment to the professions, and it shows that you know your stuff. And most CRNA program out there, I think, required or prefer their student to be CCRN certified by the time of applications. I think so. So I recently took the exam. I took it less than a month ago. No, actually a month ago. March 29 was when I took it, and I passed it. I was so nervous. So I got 101. There was 150 questions. 125 out of the 150 are graded. There's 25 random questions that they just for survey, so they don't score it. So your score is based on 125. And in order to pass, you need to get an 83. And I above the passing score standard. Was very happy. And you will too. You are in this video, and I'm so sure that you'll be passing the exam very soon. And I knew it. So before we go further, how to register for the exam, it's very easy, very, very straightforward. Just go on the AACN website. And however, in order to be eligible to sit for the exam, you have to practice as an RN in the ICU for 1750 hours. So I myself, I took the exam with I have almost 1 year of experience when I took the exam. I'm not 1 year yet, but I have to work a lot of overtime and to get enough hour to get to 1,750 hours in order for me to be qualified to sit for the exam. And obviously, you have to have a reference from your professional college or your supervisor. So you just insert the email, the organization. I don't think they're going to email the person, but obviously whenever they're doing audits, they will check and to see if that person is really, really eligible. But usually you just insert email there, and then that's considered verified, I think. But I'm not sure, don't quote me on that. But you need an email from your colleague or your supervisor. And then you obviously you have to have enough 1,750 hours when you took the test. So in order to I'm sorry. So also when you sign up to become a member of AACN and sign up for the exam altogether, you will be eligible for a discounted price. I think it's $250 for both the membership and also the examination fees. So if you only register for the exam only, I think it's like $300. I don't remember, but it's very expensive. So most of the person who sign up for the exam, they sign up to be a member of the AACN as well. All right, study resources, what I use to study Barron books. Barron books, you guys, this book is so helpful. I literally bought this book when I started nursing, when I started working in the ICU, like when I first started it. It have everything that you need for this exam. It's actually a little more details than you needed to know, but obviously it's always good to learn and understand the pathophysiology, all the numbers and all the like the central lines, the PA cath, all that numbers, what does it entails and stuff like that. But this book, I will link it in the description box below. The link to, I bought it from Amazon, very cheap. It's things like 30, 40 bucks. I think so. And then I use for questions, I use the questions package from the AACN as well. So besides when I sign up for the exam, they have the option, they have like, these are practice questions. So I just bought the practice questions as well. I think they have like 600 or something question. I don't remember, but I found it really useful. It give you like an idea of how the question will be asked during the exam. The question are obviously not match with the exam, but like the structure and like the format of how they will question you will be very similar. So I recommend buying and using it. A lot of people, a lot of my friends, they use another resources called Past CCRN. So they have a book too, but like most people just buy the Past CCRN question package. I think you can find it on Elsevier, and it's only cost about, I think, like $20 for like thousands of questions, and a lot of people use that to use as practice question to learn for the exam as well. Obviously, we all passed our NCLEX. We here at this point, and we all agree that by doing a lot of practice questions is the really way to learn for most of the board exams that we know. So I highly recommend kind of like know your stuff through the book. Know what you know the information first before you really start the questions, and then obviously the question will really strengthen your knowledge and make you remember and help you pass the exam. So most of the question I did is from the AACN website. I also have the Past CCRN, but to me the Past CCRN, it was too much. It was, first of all, I think it's harder. And it's also have a lot of unnecessary details, and the questions are not very similar to the actual exam. All right, so my experience taking the CCRN exam is 150 questions, 125 are graded. To me, the exam wasn't as hard as I expected. The questions are very straightforward. They give you the exact vital sign and you know exactly what they're asking. There are 3 hours that are given to you to finish 150 questions. I don't think you need all of the time. And you'll be fine with 3 hours. It's definitely very overwhelmed at first. I hope this video is a good start for you to know how to learn for the exam and what to buy and have a start on the exam. So what I did is I just go ahead and register for the exam before I know and think about it. So I have a set date and a set plan. So obviously we are already nurses. We always schedule our shift like 6 weeks in advance or something like that. So like I just go ahead and register for my exam like 4 or 5 months ahead and then have a set day and then put it in my calendar and then break it down system by system and study. So I break down system to study. So like, cardiovascular, neuro, and multi-system, advocacy, all that kind of stuff. So after the review, after learning from the Barron's book and watching a lot of YouTube videos, I then use practice questions from AAC and question banks in Barron's book. There's practice question in this book as well. It's very useful as well. And I do both in here and the AAC and questions. The question in this book is way harder though. You will get very discouraged when you do this book, but just keep in mind that it's not as hard as this book, the question in this book is. And then obviously the CCRN asks you about all the relevant information in practice. It's literally what we do every day in the ICU. We use PA catheter. It's asked about PA catheter, balloon pump, CRT. It asks about central lines and just signs and symptoms of shock. So it's just most of that, and then medication, your dobutamine, your vasopressors, your stuff like that. It didn't even ask about sedations. But critical care meds and epinephrine, typical DKA protocol, what to do, stuff like that. So it's literally everything we use and we do every day in the ICU in our practice. So I highly recommend you get certified and yeah, get it out of the way. All right, so next, national first-time pass rate. So 81%. 81% people pass on their first try. So obviously this is not a test that's designed to fail you. It is just a validation of your knowledge and promote safe nursing practices. So the passing score is 83 over 125. So that's you only need 66.4% to pass, okay? So the first time pass rate is really, really high, 81%, and you only need less than a C, less than 70% to pass. So you got this. So go ahead and register for the exam right now. All right, next. Okay. Oh, what am I doing? Oh, okay. So so like I mentioned earlier, we're gonna do some practice question just to kick you off, motivate you, and kind of like let you know what is it about. So these practice questions I found very helpful for me when learning about different type of shock. And the exam, you guys, they don't really ask about the pathophysiology, like what caused sepsis, or tell me more about sepsis, or like like in sepsis or patients the permeability is increased, the massive vasodilation caused by inflammatory mediators, cytokines released by the body because of the infections. So that's like pathophysiology. No, in the exam, they ask about signs, symptoms, all about signs, symptoms, all about numbers. So it's pretty straightforward. So so yeah, I understand it's super overwhelmed, but If you're looking for a place to start, here's the perfect place. Start with all the shock. We work in, ICU. We see patient in critical situation. Most of them are in refractory shock or different kind of shock. So it is important for us to be able to understand the different numbers and different sign symptom of these patients. Okay. So let's start with patient number 1. The vital signs is blood pressure 78/40, obviously low, heart rate 120. So this is high. CVP is 5. So this is not too bad. CVP regular normal range is 2 to 6. If you don't remember all the numbers at the end, I have a big table of all the numbers. You guys can screenshot it. So just wait until the end. You guys can screenshot the screen and keep it to your study. There's all the numbers that you need to know. And then PAOP, this is pulmonary artery occluded pressures. This is what we call wedge pressures from the PA cath. It's 19. So obviously this is elevated, right? So 19 is elevated. Regular is like 8 to 12. SVR is 1697. So this is also high. SVR is systemic vascular resistant. SVR is like the tone, how rigid the vascular system is. It's the higher the number, the higher the pressures. It's make the heart harder to pump against. So SVR, yeah. So that's high. Cardiac CIS cardiac index 2.0. So quite low. Normal cardiac index is 2.5 to 4. And basically cardiac index is like cardiac output over total body surface area, right? So that's like how much the heart put out compared to, in ratio of the body surface area. So it's more accurate than just cardiac output alone. And then we have SV, which is stroke volume 29, which is low because stroke volume normal range is 50 to 100. Again, guys, if you don't remember, I'll show you guys a table at the end, okay? And stroke volume is like how much the heart beat put out per beat, right? How much volume it's out, cardiac output is out per beat. So based on these vital signs, which kind of shock is this? Okay, so usually a CCRN question, they'll ask you questions like this. And so I'm gonna give you just a few seconds, and it's completely fine if you guys don't get it correct. We're all starting. Okay, so for this patient number 1, the answer is cardiogenic shock, B. So let's talk about it. Why is it B, cardiogenic shock? So obviously we know that in cardiogenic shock, this is when the heart does not pump as effectively anymore and the heart is in shock. So when the heart is in shock, the heart doesn't pump effectively anymore, the wedge pressure is high, which is the PAOP. The reason is because PAOP is the pressures. So the PA cath, normally it's in the pulmonary artery, right? And when we wedge it, when we occlude it, the balloon will flow into the further bronchioles, and then it will obstruct the blood flow there for a few seconds. And then it gives us a direct measurement of the pressures in the left ventricle, right? So if it is elevated, that means that our left ventricle is malfunction, is in failure. So that is cardiogenic shock, right? So our wedge pressure is high, the PAOP is 19, regular is 8 to 12, remember? So that is one indication that why this is cardiogenic shock. And then secondly, the hallmark to pick cardiogenic shock is SVR, which is 1697. This is high SVR. Regular SVR is from 800 to 1200, remember? So in cardiogenic shock, it is a body natural defense mechanism to compensate by increasing SVR. So you guys will see this hallmark for cardiogenic shock. And if they give you this set of vital signs, you know which one to pick cardiogenic shock. And also look at the cardiac index, only 2.0. If the left ventricle is failed, the patient is cardiogenic shock. it's the ventricle stretch out so much and the pressure is so high in there. There's not much cardiac output out. So, and also the SVR is so high, it's harder for the heart to pump more blood out. So obviously the cardiac index is low because there's not a lot of blood going outside, right? So the answer for patient number 1 is cardiogenic shock. The key element for you guys to remember for CCRN is high PaOP, elevated PaOP. Regular PaOP is 8 to 12. Low cardiac index, regular cardiac index is 2.5 to 4. And high SVR, SVR is 800 to 1200. Okay, so remember these 3, you'll get cardiogenic shock. Let's see, you already get 1 shot. You get 1 point from the exam. So you got this. They will ask cardiogenic shock, you guys. That's like for sure. Like for sure. So just know these 3, you already get 1 point. All right, let's do a few more. And then obviously we're not gonna go into depth. I'm just like kind of motivate you, show you what they're usually asking, and these questions I found very helpful. All right, number 2, blood pressure is 78 over 40. So obviously, again, low. Heart rate is 120, high. CVP is 2. Okay. All right, normal CVP is 2 to 6. So this is like borderline low. PaOP is 4. So this PaOP is actually low. Okay, so not to worry about. Usually normal is 8 to 12. SVR 453. This SVR is low, you guys. And then cardiac index is 5.5. So this is very high, higher than normal. Regular cardiac index is 2.5 to 4. 5.5 is pretty high. That means that a lot more blood coming out per minute. And stroke volume is 75, so normal range, 50 to 100. How stroke volume again is how much blood the heart pumped out per minute. All right, so look at these vital signs, you guys. Which shock do you think they are, or which answer choice do you think they are? And give you guys a few seconds before I go ahead and explain. Okay, so for this patient number 2, the answer choice, I believe, is septic shock. The reason why I confirm that I think that this is a septic shock patient is because the really key element strike me out here is the SVR, which is 453. So again, in septic shock, body inflammatory response, they send out cytokines and all that kind of inflammatory mediators because of the sepsis, because of the source of infections, and causes massive vasodilations. Whenever you have massive vasodilation, the tone, again, SVR, systemic vascular resistance, the vessel are not as good anymore. So the resistance is not there. So, and massive vasodilation, it dilate the vessel. So it causes a significant decrease in SVR. Okay. Also cardiac index is high. Usually in septic shock, because of the massive vasodilation, the heart can pump blood pretty easy because of the low SVR. So it became very high, higher than normal. And we look at like the PaOP, because there's nothing wrong. There's no issues with the heart. So when we watch the heart, it's low. And also in septic shock, other signs symptoms include, increased permeability of the vessel. So all the fluid are leaking out of the capillary. That's why we give them LR, that's why septic workup and stuff like that. And also they can use up all the coagulation factor, fibrinolysis, and causes DIC and stuff like that. But we're not going to go too deep. So for this patient number 2 is septic shock. And I'll show you guys the answer. Okay, so patient number 2 is septic shock that we talk about. So key element for choosing answer for septic shock for CCRN that you guys need to remember is low SVR, okay? Low SVR, massive vasodilation, and higher than normal cardiac index. All right. So for cardiogenic shock, so what is it again? Earlier, cardiogenic shock would be high wedge, high PAOP, and also low cardiac index and high SVR because body compensatory mechanism to increase SVR during cardiogenic shock. For septic shock, it will be low SVR because of the massive dilations and then the higher than normal cardiac index. See how easy it is? So for the exam, obviously in ICU real life, there's so many other factors and that we have to confirm. But yeah, for the exam, for the check of the exam, it can definitely help you in determine the correct answer fast and accurately. All right, two more patients. All right, patient number 3, blood pressure 78/40, low, heart rate 120, high, CVP 15. This person CVP is 15. Normal is what? 2 to 6. So that means that their preload is so high. The pressure in the right ventricle is so high, it's 15. And then PAOP is 5. So that's not normal, but that's low. Normal is 8 to 12. SVR is 1300, so that's slightly high. Cardiac index is 2.5, so it's not low, it's not high, it's borderly low because the regular is 2.5 to 4, right? And stroke volume is 27, which is very low because stroke volume is how much output the heart beat out per minute, per beat. Yeah, how much output of the blood the heart beat put out per beat, so stroke volume. All right, so out of these 4, what do you guys think? Give you guys a few seconds. Okay, so for this patient number 3, the answer is C, acute right ventricular failure. The reason why I say C is what strike me out is the CVP of 15. So what is acute right ventricular failure? So we know that cardiogenic shock is a later manifestation of congestive heart failure, right? So when we talk about cardiogenic shock, they usually refer it to the left-sided heart failure. However, when they want to really specify it, they will say acute right ventricular failure because it's the right side of the heart is the one that is failing right now. So when they talk about acute right ventricular failure, that means that the right ventricle is failing. And whenever the right ventricle is failing, it's stretched out, right? It doesn't pump as good. So there's not a lot of blood going to the lungs and then return back to the left side or going to the left side, right? Because the right side is in failure. So obviously when the right side is failure, again, like I said, it's stretched out and blood backing up from the lung causes stretch out in the right side and causes the pressure there and higher volume, higher preload, which is the CVP. CVP is the indication of a preload, right side on the right side heart pressures. So it's very elevated. So if you have an elevated CVP and also a low wedge, PAOP, the reason why the POP is low is because if there's not the blood on the right side doesn't pump as effectively. There's not a lot of blood going to the lungs, right? And if there's not a lot of blood going to the lungs, the blood not going to go back to the left side. There's not a lot of blood going to the left side either. So obviously, when we wedge the balloon, when we push air into the balloon in the PA cat will flow to the bronchiole further into the lungs, and then will give us a direct measurement of the left side pressures, and it will be low because there are not a lot of blood flow there, so it will be low. SVR is 1300, so it's slightly high. Usually in acute right ventricular failure or in heart failure in general, the body defense mechanism is to increase the SVR as a compensatory mechanism. And then we have cardiac index of 2.5. which is borderline low because obviously, again, the right side of the heart doesn't pump as good. So there's not a lot of blood go to the lung, not a lot of blood go to the left side, so not a lot of blood go out of the left ventricle either. So that's why the cardiac index is low, and so as the stroke volume, which is how much blood being pumped out per beat. So patient 3, acute right ventricular failure. So key element for choosing answer for CCRN is high CVP, low wedge, and low cardiac index, all right? So if you have a high CVP, a low wedge, and then a low CI, cardiac index, that is considered acute right ventricular failure. Okay, so let's start from the beginning, which is the cardiogenic shock. So cardiogenic shock is high wedge, low cardiac index, high SVR. Septic shock, low SVR, high cardiac index. I think that's it, right? Low SVR, higher than normal cardiac index. And then third, acute right ventricular failure is high CVP, low PAOP, and low cardiac index. All right, so you know 3 shock already. I mean, technically 2, because acute right ventricular failure will eventually lead to cardiogenic shock as well. It's another manifestation. Oops, sorry. All right, lastly, we have patient number 4. Okay, guys. Blood pressure is 78/40, heart rate is 120, CVP is 1. So this CVP is very, very low. So normal CVP is 2 to 6, right? So 1 of CVP, this patient does not have volume in their body. There's not a lot of volume going to the right ventricle. So that's why the pressures in the right ventricle right atrium. There's not a lot of volume going to the right atrium. Therefore, the right atrium pressure is low, which is a CVP. So CVP is a right atrium, right? Because usually we can monitor CVP from a central line, from a CVC, and we use it from the line. We hook it to the monitor, and it can show us the numbers for the CVP. And then PAOP is 4. So the wedge is also low. So low CVP, low wedge. SVR is 1387, so high SVR, so high systemic vascular resistance. Cardiac index is 3, so that's normal. Stroke volume is 25, so that's low. Every beat, the heartbeat is not a lot of blood goes out. So what do you guys think the answer choice for this one? Okay, so for the patient number 4, the answer choice is hypovolemic shock. Good job. I know you know this. So obviously hypovolemic shock, the name said it all. Patient in hypovolemic shock, they can either lose a lot of blood or very dehydrated, right? So they can be GI bleed or DKA or HHS. So that's for hypovolemic shock. So obviously, from the vital side, we can see their blood pressure is low, high heart rate, typical hypovolemic signs, symptoms. And then what struck me out to choose hypovolemic shock is the CVP of 1, and then the SVR, elevated SVR. Obviously, the PAOP and the stroke volume will be low because there's not a lot of volume of blood for the heart to pump out. So it's really simple. So patient 4, again, hypovolemic shock. Key element for choosing answer for hypovolemic shock is low CVP, low PAOP, and elevated SVR. So it's, again, the body mechanism to tighten the vascular system so that the higher pressures, there's more, the blood can squeeze through this vessel and perfuse the organs. All right. So yes, so you guys made it to the end, you guys. Good job. Now you guys ready to take exam, right? No, there's so much more than this. This is just a very small fractions. However, I hope it motivates you to register for the exam and start planning. Again, this book is so useful, and I think that you guys should buy it. I'll link the link in the Amazon down in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll hopefully I can make some more video help you guys preparing for the exam and further like talk about. I'd really like to make a video about like critical care medication. I'm thinking about it. But with that being said, here is the table that I talk about. Let me move myself away. Here is the table that I talk about. So this table is basically all the things that you need to know. There's a lot that you don't really need to focus on. For example, oops, I'm so sorry. For example, the DO2 or like VO2, like that. Most importantly, know your heart rate, your blood pressure, your MAP, your cardiac output index, stroke volume, stroke index, CVP, PAP, PAOP, SVR, PVR, and also know your SVO2, SCVO2, and SaO2. So stuff like that. So those are the important things that you guys need to know and need to remember for the test. So they're definitely not going to ask you to tell them the parameters, but obviously it'll be very helpful for you in order to determine the different kind of shock and choose the correct answers, obviously. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope it helped you a little bit. Please subscribe. It will help me out a lot. And click the notification bell. Thank you so much, Guy, again. And good luck practicing nursing. Thank you.